call on Deputy Clare Daly. You have 10 minutes, Deputy.
Thanks, Concorla, and apologies, Minister. I was at the Housing Committee, so I couldn't be present before now. I'm on the record previously as expressing my horror and outrage at the reprehensible deal done by the EU with Turkey. It's unquestionably immoral, it's ethically wrong, and in actual fact I think it will be proven to be illegal. But not just that, it's an utter shambles that's not going to last and not going to work, because without any doubt what that deal is facilitating is allowing the mass forced deportation of asylum seekers who have a legitimate right to claim asylum in Europe back to a country that can in no way be cited as a safe country for refugees. And testimony has been given already from organisations like Amnesty on the stories coming from refugees in Turkey's border provinces about people being killed on the border, rounded up on a near daily basis, men, women and children, since mid-January, which is completely against international law. We're talking about, in many instances, unaccompanied minors, pregnant women and so on. And it's not obviously just Syrians. We know that many Afghani nationals and so on have also been deported back. To where? We have to ask that question. The countries that they are being sent back to are incredibly unsafe. It's an absolute fact now that the Taliban actually are being outmatched now by ISIS, who are even more stronger than the Taliban are, and the two of them are fighting with each other, and there's no question or doubt about it. The Afghani government itself, weak and all as it is, has said that if these people are returned back, their safety cannot be guaranteed and they will die. So that's really what we're facilitating here. Meanwhile, in Greece, the situation is utterly chaotic. We know that refugees are being kept in closed detention centres now rather than open ones so that they can be sent back to Turkey. There's also, of course, heroic stories coming from Lesbos about the huge voluntary effort by ordinary people in that area to assist asylum seekers and so on. We know from NGO sources confirming riots in some of these areas, police attacking children, use of tear gas and so on. So is this the Europe that we have put out there? Unaccompanied children fleeing from wars, being beaten by the police in closed detentions and so on, because of the Dublin regulation? Is that the type of EU that we're going to stand over? Because the EU itself has a key role and responsibility for the crisis in the first place through its direct and indirect facilitation of US military intervention into the Middle East. And we talk about refugees. It's an easy word to say. It doesn't really mean anything. You don't really think about it. But what we're talking about is a human being, a person, in many instances a child, because many, according to United Nations human rights refugee bodies say, many children, people who've been forced to flee their homes in terror, leave everything behind because of interference in their countries, civil wars or so on. So the physical trauma, the psychological trauma and so on. We know that at least 10,000 children have disappeared since the beginning of the refugee crisis. In Calais, whereas we made the point last week, myself and Deputy Wallace visited the weekend before last, since the French government chose to bulldoze sections of that camp almost 2 months ago now, 129 children are missing in Calais, in France, the great country of liberty, equality and so on. Nobody is looking for those children or knows what became of them. Did some of them get to England? Were some of them abducted? Were some of them killed? Nobody knows. When we were there, we met 3 children, one in Dunkirk, same family, 2 girls and a boy, aged between 7 and 14. Both their parents died making the journey. Those kids made the rest of the journey on their own. People have a fundamental human right to seek asylum, and we're not giving it to them by this reprehensive deal. It actually makes me utterly sick And the most scary thing about all of this is that this isn't the end of the process. It's only the start of it. Because last summer we had what can only be described as the safety valve of Germany, agreeing to take in 1 million people. That's not going to be there this year. But does that mean that the people aren't going to stop coming? Of course they're going to keep coming, because they have no choice. And in many instances, the ones who went first were the men, and all of the organisations who work at the coalface will tell you that the women and children are due to follow. Women and children who at the moment are maybe stuck in camps in Lebanon and so on, trying to wait for the message to come forward. Now, with the shutting of the borders that Europe is attempting to do, it's not going to stop these people. It's just going to make it harder, and it's just going to mean that more of them will die at sea or wherever going through Libya. It's a fact, it's happening already. Or similar to that, what will happen is they will enrich the smugglers that operate on every single border throughout the journey that they have to make across Europe. And I think one of the points that we have to really register here is that Ireland does have a role to play, not least because of our culpability in Shannon being responsible for this in the first place, but because we can do and be something that this country has always put itself out there as being a sort of world leader for welcoming. We're supposed to be Céad Míle Fáilte, the land of the 1,000 million welcomes, whatever it is. Well, let's put our money where our mouth is. In fairness, Irish people in their droves pledged to provide accommodation under the Irish Red Cross's Solidarity campaign. The Refugee and the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission have said we've got to reassess the numbers we're taking. I want us to take more than 4,000. I cannot believe that in the space of the past year, where the situation has deteriorated in the Middle East, we've only taken a handful of people of the agreed numbers that we've got. And we're not putting Ireland out there as a destination. We made the point last week. Why aren't we assuming a leadership role in fighting and being a voice for the rights of child refugees through promoting at EU level enhanced measures for the protection of migrant and refugee children? That would be an easy thing to do. It would be a very laudable thing to do. Why aren't we doing that? Can we seriously examine this? For the moment, there are hundreds of children, unaccompanied minors, in Calais, not that far away. Could we not send out some of our department officials to look at processing application for those children to safely come to Ireland? Why wouldn't we? Why aren't we spearheading in the EU the need to look at reunification for those children, pathways for family members to reunite and so on? And why aren't we looking at the very valuable role often played by people who accompany these children on their journey? They're not family members, they're people they happen to meet along the way, but they've developed a deep attachment to those people, and there should be a process for keeping those people together and assessing their applications. There is a real urgency in this. It makes me sick that we allow EU fiscal rules get broken for security measures. In Calais, there are 5 different police forces, 600 extra police seconded in there, with hotels, accommodation and all the rest of it. There are maybe 4,000 people in Calais, 5,000, 1,000 in Dunkirk and so on. Providing them with safe haven and passage would be far cheaper than all of these measures, and yet we ignore them. They're bulldozed, haven't been told to go there, their possessions ruined and so on. And I just want to finish with a letter really that we got from some refugees we met in Dunkirk, where the Mayor of Dunkirk has actually cleaned up the act and made the situation a little bit more habitable there. But this group of mainly Kurdish refugees, and I think they sum up quite well what we're standing over. And they say, what can I write for you? You know that we are now 800 refugees. We are the refugees who could pay money to the smugglers. They made it, but we cannot pay, so we're still here. We don't want to come illegally to the UK or to Ireland or Scotland, but it should be so easy for you. We are not 800,000, we are 800 refugees. Please don't leave us alone. We are human, the same flesh and blood living on the earth. Why are we being sacrificed on this planet by a system that humans created? Why are we living in bad conditions and being ignored, and for how long? But we'll never give up. It's been 10 months, 8 for some, 6 months. We are here waiting, we still waiting. And that's going to keep continuing, and they will be joined by others as long as the EU and the West interferes in their countries. And the least we can do is take a lead for children. And I really hope that the Irish Government adopts a proactive role in the EU in arguing for a number of these, including the right to apply for asylum from areas like the refugee camps for any destination across Europe that people require.